Hello, everyone. Kate Scary again. And now we're going to talk a little bit about what it means to practice brave space in conversations. We use the language of brave space at the start of every People Supper gathering as a way of really framing the conversation. We find it really helpful as we think about the type of experience and connection we're looking to foster in our time together. It's really helpful for us to first and foremost really understand the distinction between brave space and safe space. Brave space is a phrase that emerged from academia. When students in Michigan were invited to have conversations across lines of race, those who were inviting the students in to these conversations noticed two things. First is that they noticed that folks who were on the margins of our society and throughout history and who presently feel more acutely the injustices of our time, for them, there is no such thing as a safe space. And second is that when some of the particularly white students would hear a hard reality of racism or an experience of racism from the students of color in the conversation, they kind of wave their hands up and say, whoa, this is really uncomfortable for me. I thought this was a safe space. We use the language of brave space because we want to honor that safe spaces are not available to many of those among us. We also use it because in difficult conversations, especially, we don't want to conflate safe space and comfortable space. The idea of brave space then holds invitation for us and a guide for how to have conversations like these. So for us, practicing brave space means the following. Brave space is co-created. Brave space is a conversation in which both of us are willing to work together at this moment of connection and at this relationship with one another. Brave space is willing to get uncomfortable. Our conversation might require us to look at ourselves and at our world through a different lens, or to face some things about our own experience we haven't had to reckon with before. Brave space is willing to get uncomfortable. Brave space conversations hold that we all contain multitudes. It means resisting the urge to reduce someone to a stereotype or a single story. It means to recognize that we have held pain in our bodies and we have all fallen short of doing right by others at some point. When you notice yourself reacting to or passing judgment on a particular part of someone else's story they might be sharing, practicing brave space means to ask yourself some questions about that and to see where a deeper story might be in the person that you're sitting across from. It's the practice of being mindful there might be more going on there than meets the eye. Brave space is present. Practicing brave space is to be really present and to focus on the conversation that you're with those that you're with. It means to be mindful of cultural narratives that might frame the conversation or offer a lens through which you're seeing the conversation, you're experiencing the conversation without realizing it. It's to constantly be checking and examining your own ways of showing up in your own story and the ways that you're seeing your story in a new light. Brave space conversations affirm the dignity of all people. It knows that this conviction requires an interruption of societal norms that privilege certain people over others. In a society that's riddled with power, with privilege, with oppression, injustice, and inequity, not everyone's voice and perspective is welcome or valued in our society. So in these conversations, we take seriously the work to counter that by centering those in the conversation who are on the margins in our society. As my colleague Mary Pauline, who will meet in a couple weeks, would say, we make a particular effort here to make space for and lift up the voices of those that are silenced and marginalized in our world. Brave space conversations hold complexity and they allow people to start where they are. This is gentleness with ourselves and it is gentleness with each other. It's resisting the impulse to shame others or ourselves for not knowing better. And brave space remembers that what we don't know about each other far outweighs what we do. We see this as the responsibility to be open to changing. It's something that guides me in so much of my work, especially in my own unlearning the ways that white supremacy culture has informed my own sense of self and the lens through which I see my community at times. Brave space conversations invite us to examine our own stories and to not be satisfied by our starting point, but to consistently welcome the opportunity to examine, to learn, and to grow. Brave space is a radical acceptance of the conversation and is a willingness to continue the conversation where necessary and also to let go where necessary. It's the trust that it matters for us to show up, to bear witness to one another, to hold each other's stories as we hold our own stories, and to make room for the messiness that sometimes shows up here.